Every 100 years, Dracula is resurrected, only to find his castle infested with all sorts of vermin. Rats, bats, spiders, jaguars, eagles, and Belmonts crawling all over the place. And no wonder, there's food hidden all over, hidden inside candles, walls, stairs throughout the castle. A staple of just about every Castlevania game is its wall meat. Food, usually delicious pork chops or turkey legs hidden in breakable walls or other objects for Belmont to discover. Surprisingly, instead of giving him massive food poisoning, it instantly heals his wounds. But who keeps putting all the meat into the walls? In this video, we're going to solve this mystery once and for all. To get to the bottom of this mystery, we'll have to consider who would be capable of putting the meat into the walls. We can pretty easily disqualify the Belmonts themselves since it's already there when they arrive at the castle. We'll consider any of the castle's denizens, but I'll keep the criteria a little stricter. It has to be something that's seen in the castle throughout most of the Castlevania games, since each game takes place in different points throughout history. An enemy that only appears in, say, Richter Belmont's era, like the werewolf, or the librarian that Alucard meets in Symphony of the Night, would be an unlikely candidate since something consistently is putting meat in the walls for hundreds of years before those people arrived at the castle. Also, it can't be an unknown and unseen enemy. The only possible choices are the ones we see in the games. Characters mentioned in the anime series or other spin-off media also don't count, so characters like Mario or Pikachu don't count just because they fought Simon in Dracula's castle in Smash Bros. I'm also eliminating exclusive enemies that appear in the Japanese variants, like the jumping gremlins from Akamajo Densetsu, and games that aren't canonical like Haunted Castle, Kid Dracula, or Vampire Killer. Now that we've gone over the rules, let's take a look at the potential suspects. We'll deduce this Sherlock Holmes style, eliminating the unlikely creatures and focusing down to the most likely suspects. If you want to play along, write into the chat who you think it is now, but don't cheat and skip ahead to the end of the video. The first things we can do is eliminate enemies that simply couldn't do this. Bone pillars and the serpent skeletons attached to the walls are immobile, so we can easily eliminate those. We can also eliminate vermin that wouldn't have the intelligence or ability to perform any of the culinary arts and masonry required. That includes spiders, bats, rats, jaguars, and any other creatures of the sort. I should note that some of Dracula's bats can carry objects like swords, but they seem mostly mindless, either just holding the sword to block a path or flying in one direction with sword and claw. I think it's also safe to say that any incorporeal creature could not possibly bury the meat. This includes ghosts of all various types. We can also eliminate any creature that doesn't have the means to hold the meat or seal it into a wall. This disqualifies the Medusa heads, which I find difficult to believe that they were able to open a wall, place meat there, and lay bricks over the opening with just their mouths. Same goes for the slime that bounce around the castle. Next, let's examine the foot soldiers of Dracula's army. The first line of defense are the zombies. Now, if there were brain meat hidden in the walls, I might be convinced that either the zombies or someone playing a cruel joke on the zombies were responsible, but it's just regular meats. The zombies technically could perform the task of preparing and burying the meat, but since they're mindless undead, they would need someone to direct them, and it would be a very sloppy job. I imagine that something along the lines of trying to herd cats. Sure, you can do it, but is it really worth the effort? Also, anytime we see the zombies in the castle, they're just running back and forth with no real conscious objective. The next line of Dracula's army are the various skeletons. Unlike the zombies, skeletons serve a purpose other than swarming and invading Belmont. Skeletons perform patrols when needed, or act as active hunters of anyone trying to reach Dracula. Many skeletons are equipped with a weapon of some kind, and lacking a weapon will toss unnecessary bones from their own frame at an intruder. These guys do have the ability to plant wall meat, but similar to the zombies, lack a level of free will. It's most likely that they are either being directly controlled by Dracula, or they were given orders by him and his presence in the castle is enough to control their will. They also have no clear motivation to prepare or hide meat. The last of Dracula's infantry are the various suits of armor. These guys act as elite heavy weapon troops. Their very nature of being armor gives them a defensive advantage, requiring many attacks to destroy them. It's unknown whether the armor is possessed by a vengeful spirit or if it's simply animated by Dracula. Either way, there's no motivation to place the wall meat, and they don't seem resourceful enough to decide to do it on their own. Now that we've eliminated the most unlikely suspects, let's take a look at the possible culprits. I think we can eliminate Dracula from the equation. As a homeowner myself, I can sympathize with Dracula's situation. On top of having to pay to replace all the candelabras that the Belmonts destroy every time they visit, there's nothing more frustrating than having to clean and fumigate a smelly, moldy home. Dracula also has no motivation to plant the wall meat, especially since he knows that the Belmonts use it to survive as many traps. But Dracula does have a relation that may be responsible. Alucard, the son of Dracula. We know that Alucard has been present since even before Trevor Belmont's quest, and has motivation to disrupt his father's plans. Alucard is only half vampire, born of a mortal woman. He harbors hatred for his father and all of the other undead and has allied himself with the humans. He's teamed up with Trevor and even fought against Dracula himself after Richter Belmont fell under control of Dracula's then second in command, the Dark Sorcerer Shaft. Centuries later, he assisted Soma Cruz, though he was in disguise and doesn't reveal his true identity to Soma initially. During his second encounter with Soma Cruz, he does in fact openly offer his skills to fight alongside him. As the son of Dracula, Alucard can freely traverse the castle, which would give him plenty of opportunity to both prepare and hide meat in the walls. But this isn't enough to convict Alucard. In fact, it's coincidental evidence only. Alucard has stated he intends to see Dracula destroyed, which gives him motive, and would even take up arms multiple times to see this through. But hiding meat in the walls seems like a minor, inconvenient prank at best. Also, Alucard would have no preordained knowledge that Trevor would come to the castle to destroy Dracula, so he would have no true incentive initially to hide the meat during the time period before Trevor arrives. We'll put this one on the back burner as a possible suspect, but let's look at some more better possibilities. Frequently found in the castle is the monster. Inspired by Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, this creature is an automaton of reincarnated flesh. A human brain is required, but given his actions in battle with various Belmonts, it would seem that the brain has either suffered extensive damage due to its prior owner's death, or the best and brightest was absolutely not chosen as a candidate for reincarnation. He does seem to follow orders with little hesitation, so someone could have ordered him to place the meat in hiding, such as Igor the Hunchback or Dracula himself, but I don't think the monster is the culprit. If you look at the various walls hiding meat, they're indistinguishable from the rest of the walls, indicating that the masonry work to hide the meat was performed by someone with a steady hand and a good knowledge of masonry. The monster is simply too uncoordinated and clumsy to replace broken walls with such mastery. We can also disqualify Death as a suspect, since his touch would destroy the flesh around the bone of that delicious pork chop. Also, should some of the meat survive, I doubt it would convey good health to the person consuming meat tainted with the touch of death. You'd have better luck sampling the salmon mousse. Next are the mummies. Apparently stolen from their tombs in Egypt and dragged to the mountains of Transylvania, these guys are downright cranky and irritable. While that might be enough for them to cause trouble for Dracula, they have been steadily rising up the ranks of Dracula's army. Starting out as roadblocks to Trevor's platforming, they moved up to bosses by the time Simon arrives at the castle. It would seem unlikely for them to pull pranks on Dracula, given the rewards of promotion bestowed upon them. That narrows things down to our final and most likely suspect, the Flea Man. Known in the earlier games as the Hunchback, this diminutive nuisance hops around erratically and can be incredibly frustrating to any who encounter him. Although some people, including the fan wikis for Castlevania, claim that there are two distinct enemies, I don't really believe that to be the case. Their jumping patterns and overall design is too similar, and after the introduction of the Flea Man in Rondo of Blood, we'll never see the Hunchback character again. Why the Flea Man, you ask? Simple. Not only are these men natural nuisances, but they are also the only members of Dracula's army to have a semblance of free will. There are numerous flea men roaming the castle. In fact, you can see a near infinite amount of them dropped off by eagles. Given their eagle riding ability and considerable dexterity, they would be completely capable of tearing down and repairing a wall. As one of the only living creatures that are enslaved by Dracula, they are also the only creatures in the castle that require prepared food to survive. And I highly doubt some skeleton is making roast beef just for the heck of it. They've also been in the castle in almost every iteration of Castlevania save one, Castlevania 2. The flea men are completely absent, along with all traces of wall meat. Coincidental, I'll admit, but there's more. Unlike the mummies who have been rising in the ranks, the flea men are at the bottom rung of Dracula's army, and their station is not improving. Flea men are sometimes left to their own devices, but many times are placed in armor and strapped onto wild beasts, seemingly by force. They're also used many times in conjunction with elite forces like the Axe Armor, where they serve as a disposable distraction to give armor time to ready their weapons. We've also seen them acting more playful than most of the other creatures throughout the castle, sliding down staircases, bouncing around the castle gardens. These are playful and mischievous people. The perfect candidate to play a prank like stuffing the walls and candelabras with food when mistreated by Dracula. And mistreated they have been. For whatever reason, probably because Dracula caught them hiding meat, they've been in later years relegated to the dungeons. Thrown away to rot, the flea men's natural curiosity and playfulness becomes their downfall as traps and boulders slice, dice, and crush numerous flea men. The only ones that aren't in the dungeon are placed in armor or strapped down to an uncontrollable beast, only to become bait for a lashing from the vampire killer whip. These creatures have no real strength or power base to challenge their cruel overlords. They do what they can to lash out in anger at their oppressors. They stand no chance of fighting Dracula, and the best they can do is cause him undue stress and frustration. And if Wallmeat gives the Belmonts a means to kill their enslaver, all the better. Finally, there is a copycat culprit. In the Rondo era, a very large brisket roast is hidden at the top of the bell tower. This meat is far too large to be carried and prepared by a flea man alone. Only the Minotaur could have done this. In fact, the encounter between Richter and the Minotaur may have occurred only because Richter found and ate that meat, and smelling the scent of his precious brisket on Richter's breath, enrages the Minotaur. So, there it is. I accuse the flea man for hiding all the meat, with the exception of the Minotaur's stash. This has been a logical deduction, and the flea man is the only suspect that has the skill and motivation to commit such a bizarre act. I hope you all enjoyed this fun little video, and if you disagree with my deduction, I'd be interested in your thought process and who you think it really is. Of course, ultimately, it was the software developers that are truly at fault. It just seems so odd that the health item, meat, is hidden in walls. It's something that's so recognizable to Castlevania and is so iconic that wall meat has become somewhat of a video game trope. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video.